Okay, we got BuzzCutPsycho here saying that the new features in terms of the fire that we saw from last week's Inside Star Citizen review is all busy work with no benefit. And then he talks about how Multicrew ships don't work. So let's check out his opinions here, and let's see if I'm either going to agree or disagree or both. Let's check it out.
So, most recent episode of ISE has their new fire system on display. It looks really good. There's no denying that. Very impressive stuff, as always, from them. However, when I see that, I think to myself, is this just another layer on top of the challenge that is Multicrew gameplay? And I'm fine with challenges for Multicrew. I don't want it to be easy. I don't want it to be brain dead or anything like that.
Okay. That's
but
cool.
I want the juice to be worth the squeeze.
Yes.
So what we have coming so far, because what we have now is nothing for Multicrew. But let's talk about what we have coming. We have engineering game
I wouldn't say it's nothing, but I get where he's coming from.
play, which is life support, gravity, doors, power routing, and all that stuff. Okay, sounds cool. Sounds fun. I'm all about it. We now have the firefighting coming. Okay, sounds cool. We have repairing, so repairing components, replacing components, also sounds cool. And we have turret gunning, whatever, right? Turret gunning. They have pilot and co-pilot. We have a lot of roles for people to do to make one ship fully functional, one big ship fully functional anyway. But let me ask you this. Do you think that these ships are actually worth that much effort? Do you think, outside of role-playing and LARPing and all this stuff, but in the reality of the game, as it is, and as it is...
Yeah, no, not in the alpha. Absolutely not. Not in the alpha, no. No, he's correct on that, because there's no reward that you're getting. There's no monetary reward. What I believe that BuzzCutPsycho is talking about is like the monetary reward for having a larger ship in the game. Right now, I mean, you got your larger trading ships, obviously, but, you know, like you're talking about like an 890 jump. You're talking about certain ships. I would say, it's always TVR. It's like what we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Is like your time versus your reward, right? These dynamics are being put in the ships for future, you know, and there still has to be a lot of balance in a lot of these larger ships to make Multicrew even worth it. So I get where he's coming from on this, you know.
Being designed. Do you think that adding all these taxes onto Multicrew gameplay is going to help it? Is it going to make it better? Because normally when you do something like this...
Yes, in the future. And again, like these changes that we're seeing here are definitely for future gameplay. And it's hard for some people to say... because right now it's going to be an annoyance. Like right now when you're playing in the alpha form, like it's going to annoy the fuck out of people, right? But like for the future, yes. And as the ships become more balanced, yes. But no, the balance isn't there yet. On a lot of larger ships, the balance isn't there. The TVR is all over the fucking place right now. So I get what he's saying.
You do it to, again, use that word, to tax them, to rein their power in.
Yeah.
But right now there is no power to rein in for these Multicrew ships. They are simply victims and content for smaller single-seat ships. Because as I see it, while you're out there in your Multicrew ship and you're playing, you know, firefighter, and you're playing like Peggle or whatever it is on the power triangle thing and rerouting your power and doing all that stuff, there's a guy out there in a single-seat fighter shooting you, having a good old time. Your turret gunners can't hit.
Right.
Heck,
Right.
Maybe your turret gunners are out of the turret seats trying to put out fires or change fuses.
He's not
Either way,
wrong.
they're doing something else. And eventually, that single-seat ship will disable you or destroy you. That is not ideally how a multi-crew experience should work in these games.
Right.
I know for...
Which goes back to balancing. Primarily a lot of attention on turrets. Primarily, if you're a larger ship with turrets, you should be rocking anything out there. You should be rocking the socks off of anything around you. If you have multiple turrets in a larger ship, you should be kicking some serious ass. And a lot of ships don't. You know, that's one of the problems. That's, again, towards balancing. That goes right towards ship design and balancing and the mechanics they need to add in larger ships with turrets.
For a fact, I'm not even going to say I think anymore. I know for a fact that a lot of players are in Star Citizen for the multi-crew experience, and they have absolutely no voice. And I'm not sure CIG understands how to fully design or balance not just a fun multi-crew experience, but an effective and powerful multi-crew experience. When you take a bunch of players and you put them into a ship, That one ship should be acting as a force multiplier. You're putting all your eggs in one basket. You're trying to herd all these guys to work together towards a common goal. There has to be a gameplay payoff for that.
You're not gonna hate me. Yes. He's right. He's absolutely right. Even now in the alpha, there does have to be some type of reward. Like I talk about this all the time. Rewards around the board need to be lifted everywhere, like they do. And I understand your rewards go up as your rep goes up with certain companies in the verse. I know how the system works. I've worked it. I get it. I'm just talking about people. Dynamic gameplay is what I'm talking about. The dynamic gameplay. For instance, you got a larger ship, you got smaller ships around you. You own the smaller ships around you, which isn't happening so much right now. Then you go out, you salvage the hell out of them. You make as much money as you can. You take the cargo. Maybe there's no cargo. Maybe you're just going to salvage the ships, right? You need a way in which you can benefit from being attacked. You need dynamic gameplay. Everything shouldn't just happen through the Moby Glass. I think if they continually focus on everything being contractual through the Moby Glass and making everything like mission-based, that they're getting away from the very thing that we signed up for, which is that dynamic gameplay, that MMO sandbox gameplay. And he's actually right now. There does need some type of like boost to happen for dynamic gameplay. You can ask any pirate out there as well. Same thing right now. But we are, let's put the rational hats on right now. We are in an alpha. And I know that I'm so tired of, I don't even like saying that. Like, it sounds like a blanket answer, but yet here we are, still in this alpha, still seeking stability, still seeking some of the mechanics that haven't been put in for years we've been screaming about, and yet here we are still, right? So these are great talking points.
Has to be a reason to do that. Otherwise, you as a human being are going to take the path of least resistance, which is only natural to you, and you're going to put out as many single-seat fighters, or ships in this case, single-seat ships, that could put out the most amount of firepower with the least amount of group effort. Right now, even in the current state of balance, there's no reason to be in these big ships with a crew. You're always better off, instead of fully crewing and gunning a constellation, for example, you're always better off bringing 4 independent constellations with all of its forward-facing firepower. You don't need the 2 turret gunners, you don't need the co-pilot, and you don't need the snub pilot in the back. Just bring another constellation, or in this case, 4. The same goes for bigger ships like the A2. Why would I ever bother fully crewing that thing, right? When you can have 6 or 7 other A2s dropping bombs, that's a lot of ordnance to drop on a target. And if that's the ship's only purpose, you're better off just bringing as many as possible. How about the Retaliator? Same thing, same concept. The main selling point of the Retaliator are the size 9 torpedoes and how many it can bring.
Yep.
Why would you fully crew that thing instead of bringing just more Retaliators to launch as many size 9s as possible? That's what players are going to do. And you don't want that. You're cheapening the whole game experience by doing that. So the way you prevent that is you put restrictions. For example, with the A2, you do not allow the pilot to drop A2 bombs. Or the Retaliator, you do not allow the pilot to fire torpedoes. People are not going to like that answer because they, and understandably so, want to fly and gun their own ships. But the reason why, and in my opinion, the biggest reason why they don't like that answer that I just gave for putting the restrictions on these big ships to force multi-crew gameplay out of them, is that they just don't perform when you have a crew. They don't do anything. If you were to make these bigger ships, or even any of these crewed ships in general, far more powerful than any single-seat ships equivalent to them, people would suddenly be more willing to do this if they knew that by being in a crewed ship, the only real threat that they have against them is an overwhelming amount
of smaller ships.
This is the key word here. An overwhelming amount
to take down the bigger
of
ship.
Single-seat ships.
Yep, he's right.
Or equivalent multi-crew ships. You create a whole different gameplay dynamic when you do this.
Well, here's the thing, though. Everything that BuzzCut's talking about, I'm hoping, is feedback that Cloud Imperium is listening to. because we definitely need balance in larger ships. So this becomes a reality, and it's a smart thing for Cloud Imperium to listen to. I think they are listening to people like BuzzCut and others that actually play the game, which, by the way, I would say this. I wonder sometimes how many Cloud Imperium devs are playing the game. We talked about this, where I wanted to impose 4 hours a week where all the devs, no matter what you did, if you're working at Cloud Imperium, you play the game 4 hours a week. And people got pissed off at me for saying that, but that is the type of boss that I would be. I would make everybody that worked at my company, from the janitor all the way up, play 4 hours a week of Star Citizen. I want all the input that I can get, and I would just make that a mandatory thing. And boy, did people get pissed off when I said something like that. But I really do. I want them to play the game so they can feel these problems. I want them to know that there are balancing issue problems on large ships. If they listen to BuzzCut, if they listen to others that are getting involved with these larger ships that they have paid a lot of money for, perhaps what you'll start seeing is more revenue. Maybe more people buying larger ships.
Yes, sir. Can I get an amen? Yes.
It makes sense, no? It seems common sense to me. Start to bring that balance into larger ships, to make them larger ships, to make them able to handle squadrons. Well, not squadrons, that's ridiculous, but like a squad of ships. Right? Make them able to handle that. More people will say, you know what? I like the way that the ship reacted. I like the fact that I brought in a crew of people, right? You can't really help the people reacting that you bring onto your ship other than getting the right people. That's finding the right people. That's finding the right friends to bring in. That the only way you're going to help that out is to bring in the people. But right now, is it even going to make a difference? Probably not. On certain ships, on certain larger ships, probably not. And that's what BuzzCut's talking about, right? Make it so that it's worth it. Like, even just owning smaller ships, even just being a bigger ship, owning smaller ships is the value. Like, that right there, like, blowing up smaller ships all around you is fucking awesome. Like, just to have that experience is valuable. Why not get these ships a little more to them, right? And then what you'll find is more people will spend more money for larger ships, thus increasing the revenue. It's good for everybody. So, so far, this seems like pretty rational to me.
But in the game's current state, if you were to fill these ships up with gunners and engineers and pilots and every other role imaginable, you are just going to be fodder for smaller single-seat ships.
Yep.
They're going to destroy you. They're going to farm you. There's nothing you can do. You're going to be content for them.
Yep.
So while you're running around in your ship, again, changing fuses and putting out fires, they're just flying around you and having a good old time. But I see these fires and the concept behind them as an opportunity to increase the effectiveness of the multi-crew ships, because we are now, again, putting that tax on these ships, and we're putting these expectations that in order for this ship to perform, you have to put up with other things. So if the fire is going to be there, which it will be, perhaps SIG is going to buff these ships to be far more powerful and near indestructible against other single-seat ships. That's what I would like to see. I mean, I would like to see ships be never exploded, I mean, that might be kind of an extreme example, but I would like for explosions for ships, even small ships, to be the most rare case. You can't tell me right now that you don't think the game would be a lot better if every ship was ripped apart, falling apart, and eventually just failed and was...
That's wonderful if everything was a soft death, but I would miss, like, huge, awesome explosions. And you know me, I love explosions. I would, maybe the ratio could be like 50-50 where I get the big explosion, right? But, like, I understand what you're saying in space is you, like, take something down as like have it a little bit more realistic, like with soft death. So perhaps more soft death than complete explosions and boom, that's it. I get where he's coming from on that. I don't think they would do that. That would require more object containers as the ship starts to fall apart, which would be more object containers on the server, which would be more data, which would be more instability. So I don't think they would consider that, at least in the stage that we're at right now.
Floating along in space,
right?
As opposed to just exploding. By floating along space, you're allowing for recovery and other emergent gameplay to arise. But also, another topic for another video.
Yes, Stunner, yes.
Multicrew can be the step for that direction. But unless CIG starts developing these multi-crew ships
my reactor
with
will
the
feed on
idea and the
Picos.
concept that when crewed, they are far, far more powerful than any single-seat ship equivalent to or below it, we're never going to have a satisfactory experience for the multi-crew ships. I really hate to bring this game up, but Sea of Thieves, whether you're doing PvP or PvE in that game, the multi-crew experience is so much better than Star Citizen. And it's simple, and it's
And what did he say? Hold on, let me back this up.
PvP or PvE in that game.
In what game? What game's he talking about?
Sea of Thieves.
Oh,
Whether
Sea
you're
of
doing
Thieves.
PvP or PvE in that game, the multi-crew experience is so much better than Star Citizen.
Okay. It's a lot of fun. It is. But let's for a second though. The amount of complexity in Star Citizen versus Sea of Thieves is like fathoms further in terms of like the complexity and the deep dive that this will be. Okay, but like in terms of the utility and the function, he's right. Like it's easier in a game that's set like Sea of Thieves to have that utility right at hand. And you know, Cloud Imperium can take like a note from this, because in certain terms, in terms of like with engineering and other things that we're getting into with ship gameplay, multi-crew, if you make things a little bit simpler, it tends to be that it will be a little bit more fun. But there's going to be those hardcore geeks like myself that love to be able to delve into the complexities of what it is to be an engineer, right? I want to be a little bit more, again, this is just me, this is my opinion, but I am super geeky. So I want to be able to delve into like all the systems in the ship and know the ship inside out. But you're not going to have a lot of people like that, right? I think that's what brings the cool factor in for Star Citizen is if you find somebody geeky like myself that loves to dive into the detail of what it takes to be an engineer and you have them on your crew, well, shit, you just won the lottery, right? Because that means that your crew knows more and therefore you can take the valued IQ of the engineer, apply it towards the dynamics of your ship and be more effective, not only just having better crew, but also having better effectiveness when it comes to whatever it is that you're doing in the verse. So, you know, but he's right. Like on the surface, like Sea of Thieves, it's like super easy just because of the way that the game's designed. It's very simplistic. I don't know if the analogy is a good analogy, but like I get where he's coming from.
And it's simple, and it's elegant, and it's abstract, but it is so much better. You have damage control,
Aether,
you have cooking, you have navigation, you have combat, you have all these things going on in this, like now, what is it, 8-9-year-old console game, maybe even 10 years old, in this console game. Isn't Star Citizen supposed to be better than that? Isn't Star Citizen supposed to be the most revolutionary space game ever made? Then how come right now, all these years after release, one of the most wanted features for, I would actually argue, the majority of players, I will make that argument, the majority of players is a functioning and fun multi-crew experience? Aren't you just tired of being content for everybody else when you bring your big ship out there? What about you guys in the Reclaimer? What do you have to do? People now try to solo that thing, but realistically, you have to have a bunch of people for it. Is it worth it for you? Is it worth it for you when you're out there with your crew of 5 or 6 guys and you're having fun doing your scrapping gameplay and one guy rolls up on all of you with an inferno and kills you?
Yeah, right.
I don't care about lore. I don't care about reality. Is that fun? Is that balanced? It's probably fun for the inferno. What about the 5 or 6 guys inside that Reclaimer? Probably not very fun for them. What about you guys out there that grabbed the Redeemer? My number one Redeemer fan here, if you're listening, what about you? What about if you go out there and you get your friends together and you crew them up and you've got a top gunner and a bottom gunner? That's 4 size 5s. And one single Corsair rolls up on you and has more firepower than you do. How does that make you feel? Probably pretty bad. What about if they got 3 friends, and then suddenly 3 Corsairs roll up on you, and each one has more firepower than you and your 2 friends? That is why CIG has to understand the concept of multi-crew and what people want. They have to understand 1 + 1 = 3. I think they can do it, and I think things like fire and damage control are essential to multi-crew, but the juice has got to be worth the squeeze, and the multi-crew has to perform before this is ever really worth it for players to do. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
I'll tell you, in terms of his analogy with Sea of Thieves and Star Citizen, I think the only flaw that I really see in that is the complexity that is needed for Star Citizen versus the ease, the utility of Sea of Thieves. I mean, Sea of Thieves, its levels less complicated, so therefore it makes more sense that it's going to be easier to put in game mechanics for a game that doesn't require that complexity. That's kind of where I see the flaw in that kind of comparison right there. I don't think it's the greatest comparison, but I get what he's saying about being very frustrated if you're an owner of a larger ship and being torn apart. Say you've got the greatest crew in a large ship, right? And you're being torn apart by like one ship, right? This is the balancing that needs to be discussed and talked about. But other things that need to be taken into account is the type of ship that you have. You know, not every ship should be buffed to the gills where you can take on super amounts of damage just because you're a larger ship. So that's something also that needs to be discussed as well in terms of like how the ship performs. Some ships should perform shitty. Some ships are not going to be military grade ships, right? Therefore, you have to structure a fleet or squad based upon what it is that you're trying to do in the first. But I really do agree with his assessment with the juice being worth that squeeze, right? Like there does need to be a look at the time versus reward, the TVR in the game, even in its alpha form. There really does. There really does. So good video. Really dug that. And of course, you guys are picking everything that it is that you want me to watch tonight on Star Citizen After Dark. If you're watching on YouTube, definitely like and share that. I'll put BuzzCut's description as links down below so you can see the original and go over there if you want. But I think that was a very well laid out argument, very well done video. And, you know, the voice of people actually flying ships and how they are right now in alpha. So I happen to agree with a lot. There was a couple things I disagreed with, but overall, I think very valid point.